Dylan, I'm the Director of Sales for Castle Branch. We want to thank the Chamber for partnering with us to allow us to come in and speak to all of you on employment screening solutions and how we can help your workplace become a safer place for your employees, your clients, for your organizational liability. Rob is going to go over most of the details with you, but I just want to talk a little bit about who we are and what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the company. We're going to talk about understanding the background screening process, employment screening best practices, and building a background screening solution for your organization. Castle Branch has been a member of the Chamber since 2003. We are the largest employment screening provider in North Carolina. We started in 1993 in Apex, North Carolina, and moved to Wilmington about 13 years ago. We were in the Cotton Exchange for a few years. We kind of outgrew that space, and we moved over to our new location, our headquarters off of Military Cutoff. We have just under 300 employees right now. We're adding 400 employees over the next 5 years. We're in the process of building a new building, our new headquarters. We'll have 2 buildings, not just one. We're moving all of our sales team and our business development team into the new building, so it's very exciting for us. It's really exciting that we're able to contribute so much to the Wilmington economy. We give back a lot to the community. I know you guys know with WARM, the owners of our company are very big on volunteering. They're very big on giving back. We just started a new program within the company called Community Connections. We're taking different organizations, different nonprofits that we feel can really benefit from our 300 employees being a part of, and we're going out and we're volunteering with these organizations. WARM is one of them. Habitat for Humanity, I believe, is one, the American Cancer Society, and I think we have about 15 others that we're working with right now that, you take 300 people, we can definitely give a lot back. So that's really all, I want to tell you about who we are. Rob is going to talk to you about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it, and how it will benefit you.
She gets all the fun stuff, and I got to tell you what's going on in the world. Thank you, Gina. Again, thank you all very much for being here. We also part of Hearts Apart. I wanted her to, it was one of the big ones we do. We take pictures of military families. We provide that free service, and then when they go over, they have a laminated, water-sealed proof that they can keep in their helmet, in their packs, of pictures of themselves and their families and their children that they can go overseas with. It's a really great organization. We've done a few golf tournaments and stuff, but it's one of the bigger ones that we're part of that actually have it. The lady that does it in our company is inside the company, so it's almost ours.
Well, the owners of our company are the founders of Hearts Apart.
Mm-hmm. So we're just going to talk about the employment screening process. It's kind of understanding the employment screening process, what's there, what we need to do, what's going to be important for you in moving forward in the positions that you're in. Please ask questions. Please feel free to fire away. If I don't know them, Gina will know them. If we don't know them, we'll get your email and we'll get them answered for you. I mean, that's really what this is about, is that understand that education part. Obviously, we're here in Wilmington. We're local. We love business. We would love to be part of your businesses. But more importantly, we're here to kind of let you all know how and what to do and what kind of some of the best practices are. I mean, I think that that's important for everybody to know, regardless of who you're doing it with, is having some understanding of what is necessary. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm Rob, that's Gina. How are you? What's your name?
Hi, I'm Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. In understanding it, you've got to know why. And why is one of the more important questions. It's as Gina said, your client and your employee safety. Not only the people that you're out and touching, but your actual own employees. Hiring the right people can make sure that you have a safe and work environment, and then if you're dealing with the public on a regular basis, to make sure that that person's the best representation of your company, your volunteer organization, whatever the case may be. Also maintaining that image. If one blemish on that record can really ruin that image, you're going to try to do your best to maintain that corporate image. It can be vital in your success to maintain that image outside in the public, because that's what people see, that's what people know, and that one outstanding item that happens can really kind of change that whole view and really change business for years to come until you can build that image back up. Also, limiting organizational liability, it's a big thing. If you can spend X number of dollars and not have to go through any sort of liability cases or anything like that? Wouldn't you say that that minimal cost every time you hire somebody is going to be worth that overall cost? If you spend $10,000 a year in background screening and verifying people and drug testing and things of that nature, it's really going to make a difference for that $1 million liability suit that you wouldn't have as long as you're doing this. Does that kind of, did you see the correlation between that? And overall, balancing cost with liability is really very important. Can you run a background check on somebody for $1,200 and get an immense amount of information? Yeah, but you don't want to do that 100 times a year for your 100 new employees. So it's finding your comfort level with how much of the cost you're willing to spend with how much liability you're willing to take on as a company. Also meeting state and federal requirements. I mean, it's very simple. You're going to have some state guidelines that other companies don't. You're going to have some federal requirements that other companies don't that you have to adhere to. And with that comes your background screening process and possibly your drug screening process. Any questions on kind of what we're going to talk about? Pretty straightforward. I didn't think so would be. I'd just like to ask.
Who's your competition?
We have a national competition. There really is no competition per se in North Carolina. Not no, but we're the largest North Carolina screener company. But as far as nationally, you've got like a Hire Right, you've got PreCheck, you've got Verified Credentials, you've got some. Those are some of the biggest ones. We're nationally in the top 10 in background screening providers. We are the top one in North Carolina, but we are in the top 10 in national. And we kind of pride ourselves on not being the ADPs of the world. ADP is probably one of the biggest screening companies in the nation. And they've got 10,000 employees. Well, we've got 250, which means when you call us, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get me. If you call me, you're going to get me. You're not going to get an automated, you're going to get an automated system, but it's going to direct you to my desk if you know my extension or you know my last name, rather than having to fish through all these people. That's kind of what, with being with Castle Branch, what I really liked is that I know my clients and we know our people, but that's more sales end. In reality, you want to go with somebody you feel comfortable with, and you want to go with a consumer reporting agency, which we call CRAs from now on, but you're going to want to go with a CRA that you feel comfortable with, that you can get somebody on the phone with, that you can actually have a conversation with, because there's going to be things that you can't verbalize to a machine and get the right response back. You're going to want to be able to talk to those people, and that can be very, very important in moving forward and being able to hire somebody quickly. You need somebody in position, you want to get that phone call in and figure out what this means, that's what you want. So best practices, and these are just kind of standardized best practices notes. This isn't what's right for you is right for you is right for you. Everybody has, as I said, their different picture of liability versus cost. But this is just going to be a best practice for the overall start. How many of you are doing background screening currently? Show of hands. So you three, you guys are not? You are not, correct. Okay, so best practices is going to try to walk you through establishing your screening policy. Having something in place that's going to that is going to basically be standardized. It can be changed, it can be updated, it can that, but you want to have a policy in place so that when you do move forward, you'll have a guidelines to go on in the rest of your hiring practices. And it can change, it can develop, it can, you find something that you didn't find last time you want to do, that's great. Set up an account with a CRA, as we said, that's us. As you set up yours, you want to then set up that account to get started. Create an employment screening package, which means what do you want to search for? And we'll get into that later, but what do you want to create? What information are you looking to have? What information do you want to use as a hiring practice? Notification and release templates. This is very detail oriented. We could go into this forever, but I'm not going to bore you with it. It's basically the notification to the employee that they're going to have a background screening that is going to have to do with their hiring or possibly not hiring. That then leads into pre-adverse and adverse action. And again, my card's on the table. If you want to talk about it, you can call me. But pre-adverse and adverse action means when you didn't hire them or did hire them, they have the right to find out why and get a copy of that background screening. That is also something that we can provide to kind of give you those templates if needed. Dispute resolution process. You should have a way within your company that all these disputes are handled in the same way every time for every type. Dealing with hiring and background screening. It should never differ. It should always be X, Y, and Z of the steps. That means that you can actually know where it is in the process and go to other employees on where this is if needed. That being said, The screening and implementing policy, you're going to see that the first and the last are pretty much similar. Seek legal counsel. Know this, no CRA, nobody in our position can give you legal counsel. That's not what we're there for. We're there to provide a service. And by law, we cannot do that. So you're going to want to do that primarily first and find out what their wording is. Does everybody kind of have a general counsel that they deal with in this room that probably wrote, your opening, your articles of incorporation, things of that nature, I would assume? So with that, you probably want to go back to them and say, okay, now I'm going to look to implement a screening process. Please walk me through how that needs to be worded on my application or in my orientation or whatever the case may be. Stating your company's position for screening employees. I've always, and I just was at a convention where a lot of people didn't do it and it really kind of hit home. I think it's important that stating your company's position for screening is going to help you hire the right people, because how many of you get referrals for people? Like you met somebody's, my brother's just moved to town, he wants to get a job, or somebody wants to volunteer, my cousin really wants to volunteer, heard about your great organization, wants to come out, things of that nature. So when you have those posted and those different requirements, as it said for each position is there, that's almost like a pre-screen that's out in the public for you, because these people that are going to get referred, if they know that these are the requirements and these are the guidelines you have, you're not going to have those people come in and go through the process and spend the money to find out that they have these DUI convictions or felonies or misdemeanors, if it's already there in clear writing for the employees. Post reasons for disqualification, that is going to create that clear view. Again, it's going to help you screen outwardly rather than having to screen once you get in, once these people are already coming in. A recheck policy. Recheck is when you've already done the larger screening of the employee, the initial screening, we'll say, and the recheck is after a year or after 2 years, whatever you want to do in your policy. We always suggest a year, but it's up to you. But after that, you can do a smaller screen. It isn't going to be as costly, but it's going to basically see if anything new has come up. Some companies I work with do a quarterly, a 6-month, a biannually, or an annual screening. A lot of healthcare companies I work with in Missouri have to do quarterly. They do every 90 days. They screen them through a FACES Level 3 search, which is all sorts of health stuff that it goes through all these databases, and they have to do it quarterly. That's a state guideline, not necessarily everyone, but in reality, that's what they do. We always suggest a recheck because you could have somebody that's, John Smith, that's been a valuable employee for 10 years. You screen him at the very beginning, but you haven't screened him since. And now he's got 10 misdemeanor assaults. He's got a felony pending conviction. He's got all these things. Now at work, greatest guy ever. But you never know. And that's something that with this recheck, you're going to find out. Policy changes. If the policy does change, you're going to want to post that. You're going to want to have that available for your staff to see that the policy has changed, because as these policies change, your screening process might change as well. Maintain follow-through with your screening policy, and that's just simply make sure that everyone has a clear understanding of why they're being screened, why they're being rechecked, things of that nature, and seek legal counsel for the follow-through. So your first and last are both seek legal counsel. Does everybody understand the importance of that? That's where you want to go with legal counsel to make sure that you're doing the right thing for liability and that you're creating this system for the right reasons. And we'll talk about that in a second. FCRA. Is everybody familiar with the FCRA? FCRA guidelines, policies, procedure, Fair Credit Reporting Act. These are your basic reasons. These are your basic things for the FCRA. Permissible purpose. Why you background screening for this position. Notification and release. Same thing we said about signing off on. Pre-adverse and adverse action. Being able to create that template for those people that want to disclaim the background screening or RCRA's results in order to get the job if you were then denied the job because of that. Disclosure and authorization is something they need to sign off on that lets them know that we are going to be running a background check, and that is usually, well, not usually, it is always kept on file, hard copy in their folder. That is something that there's no question, it is an FCRA guideline, it has to be done. And dispute resolution, as we talked about. The FCRA basically, in a nutshell, is the governing body for being able to screen, pre-screen employees and screen current employees. So you have to follow their guidelines for that, as do we. So credit worthiness, things of that nature. There's a lot more complicated things. I don't think anyone in this room is probably going to be doing credit. Maybe you possibly, but most people is going to be doing credit worthiness. You're going to be looking for criminal convictions, sex offender, drug, alcohol, things of that nature. So I think that overall, FCRA can be a little overwhelming when you first get into it, but with the help of agencies like ours, it can be very understood, and also with your legal counsel. Does it make sense? Any questions? Don't be scared. I'm a pretty nice person. I talk about mean stuff, but I'm okay. All right? All right, so building a background check package for your industry. This is probably what's going to be the longest part of this. And please ask questions if you have them. It goes in this order, how you want to layer things. And we're going to talk about layering for a second. Is there such thing as a perfect background check? Anybody? Guess. You got 50-50 shot. No. Why not? Because the systems that most of us use, we're going on what the state is providing. We're going on what the National Record Indicators Index is providing. We're going on these. Now, are there ways to layer different items on this list to create a very substantial background check? Absolutely. Are there ways on this list to create something that's going to work for you? Absolutely. You've got to make sure that when you're creating your background check, that you're creating levels. As you see, residence history. Residence history is when we go in and we search anywhere that their name, date of birth, social has been used. They could have stayed on somebody's couch, but if they applied for a Blockbuster card, those of you that remember Blockbuster, they applied for a Blockbuster card on their buddy's couch, that's going to register because they had to put their name, date of birth, and social, and they were there for a year. So that's a residence history. Even though he never had a place of residence, it can still show up. So that's going to create that map for searching those counties that we need, and that we'll see that in a second. Social Security verification, or TRACE as some people call it. The Social Security verification is simply pulling any name that is associated to that Social Security number. So maiden and aliases. If somebody's been married, female obviously been married, she'll have 2 or 3 names. Male, if it comes up with 5 or 6 different names that aren't the actual name or just different spellings of the name, that might be a red flag, and that might be a reason to search maiden aliases names in your package. County criminal searches. They're going to search the county of residence you can do. The classic is the county of residence, or a 7-year county criminal search, which searches every place of residence for 7 years. That 7-year mark is FCRA. You can't go back any farther than that except for certain distinguishable reasons. And we can talk about that. But most likely in most of yours, unless they're at an executive level, you're not going to be able to go past 7 years. Okay? Statewide criminal searches are going to have not every, because not every state's the same, but statewide is going to have the majority of the counties. Some do have all 100 like North Carolina, some do have all 15 like Maryland, and then some don't. Some have 10 of 12 or 85 of 90. So statewide is another good layer to add on to that county search. And then federal criminal searches. Those federal are higher level convictions, embezzlement, things of that nature. But again, we'll talk about that in a minute. MVR reports. Why would those be important?
What is it?
Motor vehicle records.
If they're driving for job.
Obviously, perfect. Driving is an example. Why else would they?
DUI.
Exactly. If they haven't been convicted, it might be on their MVR report, but it might not be in their county criminal report. So that MVR report is going to bring back that record that they've had 2 possible DUIs, but let's say they knew the officer that got them the second time. They were processed, but they never got convicted. You can now see that repeating pattern, and you maybe necessarily wouldn't have pulled it up in a statewide or a county criminal. Drug and alcohol testing. For those of you that do background screening currently, do you do drug and alcohol as well? Do you guys?
We do drug.
You do drug? Do you know what kind of drug test you do?
It's a 5-panel.
5-panel, so
It depends
it's...
on our client. We're a recruiting staffing company.
Okay.
It depends on what our client wants.
It's your client basically creates that. So you go up to a 10-panel if possible.
The majority of them are 5-panel.
So in 5-panel, you're getting cocaine, marijuana, opiates, benzocyclidine, and then you're getting phenylcyclidine, which is PCP. So you're getting like the 5 majors, let's say. What is one of the more used drugs nowadays that isn't in that 5-panel? Crack, you'll get cocaine because it has traces of it. It's baked with baking soda, so that you're still going to have those traces if people are using. You'll get that positive. You'll get positive for cocaine. You won't know if it's powder or crack, but it's cocaine, so bye-bye. But in reality, and this is something that a lot of people don't know, one of the more used drugs nowadays are Oxycontins, your hydrocodones, those prescription drugs. So I always suggest with companies, especially with companies like us that have a really decent pricing. I mean, it goes up maybe $3. Actually, right now with ours, it's the same price with 5 or 10 panel. So if I told you you can get every drug pretty much known, not known, I'm sure there's some out there that people haven't talked about yet, but every drug that's abused, let's say, in a 5 to a 10 panel, wouldn't you choose to do the 10 panel? So then you would know, because they might not be using marijuana, cocaine, any of those. They might only be using Oxycontins, and that's something you need to know as an employer before they are hired.
Where does the employee go to get the drug test?
Any number of places. Our company, we don't exclusively use LabCorp and Quest, but we use them primarily, and they're a national company. So your law of averages is there's going to be one within a 25-mile radius of your location or a location in any major city. Even outside of cities, you'll find that if it's a St. Louis versus a Jefferson City in Missouri, Jefferson City is a lot smaller, but they have their own LabCorp location because they're an hour and a half away. So they have more, but any drug place, any town is usually going to have theirs, and any hospital usually has theirs. And then we have what we call preferred sites, which is a local provider that basically takes their results, can administer the drug test, and then sends it off to a Quest location for the actual screening part, for the MRO, which is the medical review officer, and that's who's going to make those determinations on those tests. Drug testing is going to be probably in 85% of companies across the nation in the next 10 years. It just is. We're probably at what, Gina, would you say is the company? The people that we work with, of our standard clients that do drug testing, how many do drug testing? I don't know that one. I would say it's...
we probably do about 50% of our clients, of our employment screening clients do drug testing. It's definitely higher. We have a big college and university sector of our business. We do, we're at 50% of colleges across the country screening students that are going to clinical sites, so nursing students, allied health students, occupational therapy. And typically most of those have to get drug tests before they can go into the clinical site.
All of everyone I worked with. I work in South Carolina, and everybody has to do it. And it's always anywhere from a 7 to a 10. It hasn't gone below 7 in a long time, and most of them are 10 panel because they want to get those Oxycontins. Those are what the people are getting through these programs and then starting drug ranks. It's sad, but it's true. But in reality, you're going to see that trend really kind of peak up and go forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if your boss is coming to you, my boss is coming to me and saying, hey, listen, drug testing is more evident, let's get something in place. I wouldn't necessarily volunteer-wise, because that might be an invasion of privacy, but again, that's probably the legal counsel side. If you were going to do drug testing, I would definitely seek legal counsel before you signed up with anybody, just to make sure that there's a permissible purpose for that. DOT physicals, that's usually just Department of Transportation. They do a modified 7-panel. They check for accelerants, which is something that can change the drug testing you put in, like bleach would be considered one. And then DOT physicals, that's probably something, you might have it in construction with drivers that they're driving your goods or something like that have a DOT license. Are there questions about these? Because I'm going to go into county and state and federal. I'm going to go into different levels of crimes, but is there any questions about this? It seems like there might be. Please feel free to fire away if you do. No? Everyone's got it? Perfect? Done. All right. Obviously, we'll be here for a few minutes afterwards if you don't want to speak out in public. I'm not that big a fan of public speaking, so I understand totally why you guys wouldn't want to do it. In doing all those layers, what information can you uncover? Well, you can verify their identity. That's key, important. Make sure they are who they say they are. Make sure that they don't have 10 different maiden aliases out there with criminal past. That means you can search those maiden aliases and find out what that person with that name has done, which 9 times out of 10 is the same person. So that's very key. Criminal history, obviously, that's what we've been talking about. We can also check references. Us as a company, we offer that. We offer education references. We offer, education verification. We offer employment verification if you want to search the last 3 employers. Drug and alcohol use or abuse, that's something we talked about, and as well as motor vehicle records and reports, and why those would be important. Criminal charges, infractions, misdemeanors, and felonies. Tell me the difference. What's the difference? It's hot in here. Do what? So what's an infraction? Sorry, I'm warm. It's warm in here. An infraction, is it at 94? I think when I walked by. No? Oh, okay, sorry. I'll tell you just the base way to kind of look at this. Infractions are something you can be handed a slip of paper and you pay a fine and you walk away. In California, possession of marijuana on the street under a certain amount is an infraction. Okay? Colorado, same thing. Possession of marijuana on the street, infraction, under a certain weight. Misdemeanor. You can be cited, you can be arrested, you can be charged, and you serve average under a year in jail. But the jail you go to is not a federal or state. It is usually a county jail. So you've now gone from a citable and paying a fine and possible community service to now you're getting arrested. You can serve time. You're going to go to court. It's not like necessarily just pay a fine and go. You're probably going to go to court. And then felonies. Felonies is over a year in jail, federal or state penitentiary. So you can probably get out of it probably in the sense that you did something stupid, you're walking drunk in public down in Wilmington. I've never been drunk outside here in Wilmington, but you can get a citation that's an infraction right here. Now, if I caused a problem and I got an altercation, that could be a misdemeanor. If I ended up killing the guy, that's a felony. Does that make sense to everybody? A lot of people don't get the difference of it, and there's more detail to it, and if you want to ask me after we're done, please feel free. I'll go into more detail about it, but that's just a good generalized way to kind of look at those and figure out what you're looking for in your screening policy. Because infractions, you might not cancel out somebody. Certain misdemeanors you might cancel out, and majority of felonies, probably all. I would be hard-pressed to say what felony you wouldn't cancel out somebody for hiring or volunteering. That's kind of the way I would look at it if I was in your all's position. You've got to cover yourselves. Remember, cost versus liability. You want to get as much of this information in all three of those levels as you can, but you don't want to increase the cost just for no reason. All right, let me just touch it. Oh, there we go. All right, so give me some questions you have right now about this. Anything. You got nothing. Nobody, no, everyone knows it.
Not really a question, but more of a challenge is the new rulings and stuff saying that you can't blanket turn away applicants because they have a misdemeanor, or even a felony. You can't do it anymore. You're not allowed to do it.
So if you increase your background check, I'll tell you this: if they have a misdemeanor, they probably have some sort of pending charge where they were charged for and they were tried and they were convicted. Can you turn away for that?
Depending on what it is.
True.
I mean, if someone has, even a manslaughter, but they'll be working in an office by themselves,
Really can't slow it
So it's kind of
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's so many rules now, like about all this stuff that I just feel like you're so limited, like with.
So it kind of comes down to like permissible purpose. Like,
Yeah, like
what can I search for this that I can't search? So in each of your positions, do you have guidelines that are set that you can hire if they do this or do that?
No, we don't have guidelines set. It's more of a, just looking at the back. I mean, it's a
Case by case.
yeah, case by case.
Yeah. Have you?
The thing to think about with this is the EEOC is under fire right now. They're the ones who are coming in and saying, hey, you can't do racial profiling, blacks are more likely to go to jail than white people because they get arrested more because of racial profiling, so you can't do this. Well, the EEOC is under fire for that, and there's a class action lawsuit pending against them because they're putting pressure on you as employers to say, hey, no, you can't screen people, but you're trying to do your due diligence to protect your company, to protect your clients, to protect your employees. So there's no set guidelines right now in place. Certain states, it's really not even a state, it's more municipalities. Seattle has one where you can't turn someone away for like what you were saying. If there's a manslaughter charge, but they're in an office by themselves, well, why can't they work here? Right now, North Carolina does not have any of those laws in place. So you as an employer can screen employees, and as long as you have those guidelines in place, as long as you have policies in place that say, You don't want to have a policy in place that just says, do a background check. You know, you have to have a background check done. Well, what does that mean? You need to make sure that your background check, your policy says, do a background check, and in that background check, we want to see criminal information on a county level, and we want to see criminal information on a state level. And then you can say in your policy, okay, well, great, we saw this, we're doing it on a county level, we're doing it on a state level, but we want to make sure that we're disqualifying people for X, Y, Z. So if you're an office employee, you cannot work here if you have a felony charge, or if you have a misdemeanor charge. So you want to have all of those things within your policy, and that's where you're covered as far as the EOC is concerned, and it's what you were talking about as far as you can't just blanket things. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're not interrupting. I appreciate the answer. I appreciate the answer. I mean, when you're screening for your purposes, what type of employees are you screening? Are you screening clerical,
Yeah,
admin,
positions are
most
admin, medical
Okay,
support, yeah.
okay, admin and medical support. So staffing, what are most of yours? I mean, what's your biggest couple clients? Let's say IT.
That's IT, administrative, and light industrial and maintenance. So,
Okay,
We
light
also
and-
do direct hire, too, so really it's across the board.
Okay, all right. And sir, you?
Of course, most hours are non-professional,
Okay, so skilled labor,
so skilled labor, yeah, and,
apprenticeship, things of that nature.
right.
Do you have people going to,
We
and
run a drug test because the insurance company
Requires it.
requires it. Also run a motor vehicle record, 2 reasons, see if they can drive our truck and job site and see if they can get to work.
Yeah.
Very big problem.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's not funny because I did construction for a number of years and I picked up 3 guys
do you,
to get them to work. You know, I totally get it. I had a car. Go figure.
do you have employees who go into people's homes?
Pardon me?
Do you have employees that go into people's homes?
No.
So you're doing your,
Not on a regular basis, we do have occasionally, but we don't do residential work,
you're mostly
and
commercial?
especially residential service work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Biggest thing to
New
think about,
Construction, commercial.
so things to think about, so you have employees that go into people's homes?
We don't take clients on where the employee goes into care.
Okay, because that's the other thing to think about. If you do have some, if you're working with a specialty population, if you're working with the elderly, if you're working with handicapped people, you want to make sure that you're doing a sexual
Sexual offender.
sexual offender search. You want to make sure that these people are not on the on. I just
The sex offender list.
Thank you. What is
Yeah.
wrong with me?
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
And that's the one good thing about the sex offender registry is that it covers all 50 states. Someone might be registered on the sex offender list in Illinois and move here but not register and think they can get away with it. Well, guess what? If we pull them, it's going to show up. Doesn't matter where they registered. We're going to find that information.
Yep.
So that's one thing. Even in your office. I mean, I know it sounds horrible, but I really don't want to have to work with someone who is a sex offender. It would make me feel uncomfortable as an employee, and I would hope that Castle Branch is going to do their due diligence, which they do. We've all had extensive background checks.
Yes.
Us, and they still hired us anyway.
Yes, absolutely. I was fingers crossed that whole day. Yeah, I mean, it's important that you're creating a package that's going to match your needs versus your cost. I mean, we're not here to say, give us $150 per person. You don't need to do that. You can cover your liability with something that's less expensive and more cost effective, let's say. But in reality, it is an important part of hiring and hiring practices to do a background check. And yes, are you running into the EOC and stuff like that? I got literally an hour worth of my life chewed off about the EOC 2 days ago in Vegas when I was at the AMSA conference. And that they're running into it on a huge scale. I mean, we're talking about companies that hire 10,000 people for American Moving and Storage Association, and they are just, it's tough. And we're going to end up talking to their legal counsel coming up in February, like having just a meeting in a room like this with all their legal counsel about how we can do that. But as she said, they're getting a lot of litigation put against them for these rules because they're tying your hands. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're given these guidelines, and now you can't even follow these guidelines because they say that that's not permissible, or you can't not hire because of this or this or this. Again, I don't know when it's going to change, but I have a feeling that there's something coming down.
Yeah, like I said, there's class action lawsuit pending against them. They went after BMW recently. BMW had a policy in place, and it was about 10 years ago, and they were doing one specific screening, and all their employees are fine. Well, then they had a new contractor who came in, and they said, well, we require you to do X, Y, Z, so we're going to make you do X, Y, Z on these employees. Well, BMW hadn't done that in the past, and so now they rescreened everyone according to their contractor's guidelines, and all of a sudden there were people who were now not eligible to work there, so they had to be fired. Well, it wasn't that BMW changed their policy, it's who they worked with. These people can no longer work with these contractors that BMW had partnerships with. So the EOC came in and said, well, hey, no, that's racial profiling, this, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. Well, they're being countersued now. So they tried to sue BMW, BMW is now countersuing them and saying, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. This is what was a requirement from someone that we do business with. We can't not do business with them, so.
When you do a background check and what's your package? Like what do you do? And I'm not calling you out. I'm sorry. I'm saying this so other people can hear like what your standard one is. I'm going to ask her what her standard one is, just to kind of hear, so everyone gets a good view of what people are doing in the room. Because I can tell you what I think is great, but that's not real world.
Standard, you talking about
Your background check. What you're doing, state, county, just kind of.
We're doing a state and county, and if they've lived in other states.
So every county of residence for 7 years,
Yeah.
plus this state,
Yeah.
or their state of residence, or just this state, and then all the counties outside.
Just the state, all the counties outside.
Okay, so you're doing this state, and then any county they've lived outside of this state.
Yeah.
You're probably doing a sex offender
Yeah.
list. You're doing a national record indicator sex offender list.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our policy is we will not place a contractor on a job or contract to hire job if they've had a felony or misdemeanor.
Okay.
But we ask each client what their boundaries are.
Absolutely. I mean, your clients have their own
Yeah.
their own
So-
type
so
of background
someone
screening they want
had
to
a
adhere to.
DUI 6 years ago and hadn't had another one. Some of our clients will go, that's okay. It's not a repeat offensive.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said yours is MVR, sir. You do drug testing in MVR currently?
Yes.
Okay.
We also do, in order to get the Twix card to go on state ports,
Uh-huh.
I think there's a background check involved with that. They send us to a specific place, and for
Is that through
specific
TSA?
money, we get, our employees issued a Twix card.
Okay, is that TSA? Transportation Safety Administration? Is that through that, the Twix card? Because it's a state port is why I'm asking, because I just read an article today about that,
I don't
funny
know
enough.
what TWIC stands for.
No, I'm just wondering, because state port's with the Transportation Safety Association. Can you write that down for me?
And also, when we wired the FBI's office here in town,
Okay.
I had, all my employees had to go through a background check. It's been so long ago, I think the general contractor took care of
Is
it.
there FBI fingerprinting?
Some of my employees said grandmama down in Georgia got asked questions at the time, so they went extensive on some of them.
Yeah, I mean, some of them can be. That's,
And I had some that could go to the job site and work and some that couldn't,
yeah.
but I didn't have to lay any off.
Okay, that's good. I mean, that's by no means is that what we're here for. This isn't about laying off. This is bringing people on and having the best practices moving forward. Not necessarily, we'd like for everybody to be safe in the workplace, but it's better in your workplace than we do. And importantly enough, background checks can bring back great information for you. I mean, that's really what this is about. And for you, what are you doing?
We're doing county, Bath County, the DMV and sex offender.
So Flat Rate County for 7 years, all counties residents
Yeah.
for 7 years, MVR, and what was the last one? I'm sorry.
I think sex offender.
And the sex offender index.
Yeah.
That's not a bad standard search.
You're not doing the North Carolina statewide? Okay. Here's why.
It's terrible, I just
So,
want the results.
good thing is that all of you are located in North Carolina.
Yeah.
North
I do.
Carolina, all 100 counties report to the state repository. So anything that happens in any county gets reported to the state repository. It's great. Because what happens if we live in New Hanover County, you go over to Brunswick County, you go over the bridge, you go out to a friend's house, you're drinking, and you get pulled over in Brunswick County, and you get a DWI in Brunswick County. Well, if I only pull where you live, and you live in New Hanover, I'm not pulling that DWI from Brunswick County. So we have no idea that anything happened in the surrounding county. So for North Carolina, I always recommend all businesses in North Carolina do a North Carolina statewide. And then you can do your counties outside of the state.
Because remember I talked about, North Carolina has probably one of the best statewide searches because it has all 100 counties. And in those counties, they all report in a timely fashion.
They all report daily, every day.
Because I think we've had, even recently, I've had some that came back within the next day.
So you're doing this, yeah, you're doing
She
the,
lived in different counties in North Carolina, but I was the only one in North Carolina.
Yep.
yeah, so you're doing the North Carolina statewide. So that's definitely something, and I'm not telling you, hey, to use us, but if you are going to use a CRA, definitely look into the North Carolina statewide because, again, all 100 counties report, and they report on a daily basis.
And across the nation, it's probably one of the more cost-effective states to run that statewide. Like New York is like,
$75.
North Carolina with us is like 7. And it's a good report. So something to think about maybe moving forward, having just a simple standard North Carolina for you. Do you find most of your employees are from the state? Yeah. So it wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, it wouldn't, something to look into, you know, and not necessarily, again, not with us, but just something to look into because it has all 100 counties. If they're all, majority are from here, and then you add something on, you add any county's residents outside of the state, it'd be like $17. Something to think about in that sense. Again, it's important to make good decisions. I mean, you've got your company's liability, you've got your position of employment to worry about, you know, you've got your company's image to worry about and staffing. You're verifying these people to be staffed in other places. You've got your volunteer group and network to be worried about, and you've got people that come in from all around the nation. You know what I mean? And that's tough. That's something that we'd probably talk to you personally about because in reality, I would probably set up a system for you that they pay for their own, so you guys don't have to. Because we have a way to put in a package code where they pay for their own, and then that report goes to your roster online, and that's what I would do.
That would be for your volunteers.
Yeah, for your
Volunteers can pay
volunteers,
for their own
not for the
employees,
3
not
full-time
for
employees.
their own.
You know?
What does something like that cost for a nonprofit to have their volunteers?
It's the same thing, so it would be $7 for North Carolina statewide, and then $10 for all counties outside of the state, so it's $17. And then I would definitely do a sex offender registry, which would be $5.
Yeah, so like 22.
$22, $23.
But they pay $22, and that means that, you know, for that next year, they can volunteer as many times as they want with you, because you have their background check, you know, and then you can recheck them if it's been 6 months. You can set a policy in place that says, if you haven't volunteered with us within 6 months, we can do a recheck policy. Do you guys recheck at all in yours? Is it the one time they get hired, and then, oh, they're good, they seem like good people?
What do
Yeah.
you do for your providers? What do you train them?
The FACES, the level 3?
Nationwide healthcare fraud and abuse.
We do that, we do that for everybody that hire, whether they're providers or not, just to see if they're on their OIG, all that stuff, but,
Yeah.
We have a great new search, just so you know. It's an ongoing basis, so it's the same search that you're doing now, but we check the list every single month. It's checked just to make sure that there's nothing happening that you guys aren't aware of.
We do ours every 90 days for our individuals that aren't placed in a permanent position. So if they've worked one job for us, and for say 2 months, and then don't take another one until the 4th, we do the background check again.
Do you run the full background check again? That's good. That would be good. I mean, you could even put a policy in place, and she'll probably get mad, but you could probably put a policy in place where you could do a recheck where you don't have to do the full one again, but you could do something with certain layers that would pull back any new information and not have to go with that full extensive
When you go back
price.
7 years, and just go back the 90 days. So it's-
Yeah.
Yeah, particularly if they were someone that lived in 10 states prior to being in North Carolina.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
do North Carolina.
Yep. Any questions?
Can you tell on the background check, the criminal ones, you had the 3 different categories of offenses. Can you tell if they serve time on the, does it come out on the background check like
It
they serve
does.
2 years?
In hours, yes, not all. Some companies that provide the service send you basically the court documents back that can be brutal to read, brutal. But we actually decipher the results and then we put them into a PDF document. That document's a clickable PDF that pulls up, and then we actually go all the way down to like disposition date, what they pled, did they serve jail time, when did they get out, was there restitution paid to other parties, things of that nature. So anything that's in that court document, we decipher down and put all of that information so it's all visible to you. That's us.
We'll
There
come
are,
back from the court, the codes on it, and we have to figure out what those codes are. So we have a team
Yeah.
in our office that does that for you.
and unless you have the decoder ring, you're not gonna do it.
Got it out of the Cracker Jack
I
box,
got one
little
sitting on
thing.
my desk right now. Yeah, no, those are, I wouldn't, that's a tough job in our place. I mean, they're trained for 8 weeks straight to be able to read those documents and pull back that pertinent information for you also. I mean, that's 8 weeks of training. I think I trained for 8 days to be a server. You know, I don't know how they do it, but they're good at it and they bring back that information. So, and I will tell you this: once somebody's seen, like once somebody's gone with somebody else and gone with us and seen what we do and how we bring back the information, it can be night and day. It can be like, oh my God, like I never knew. You know, they recheck everybody, let's say, and then they had this person that said, well, it looks like you had a couple things here, but I don't know what this means, and then we come back and decode it using their ring, and as we decode it, it is all right there in front of them, and it all of a sudden now all becomes a lot clearer, you know, because that's what you want. You don't want to have to look through all this information. You want to know exactly what happened. You know, she's processing 25, 30 people a day maybe. She doesn't want to have to go through and have to research all this stuff. She wants to see the information right there in front of her so she can move forward with her day, you know. Any other questions? I don't want to take up more of anybody's time. If you have questions, we'll be here for a few more minutes. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. We're glad to fire away. No? We're done.
Appreciate everyone coming.
Yeah.
Do you have a card?